What do you think some of those advisors should be preparing or thinking about?
Putting more thought and intention into how it's being implemented, which is ultimately what's going to lead to success for them. First off, you need to niche down. You need to determine, of the clients you serve, which ones are your favorite? Why are they your favorite? How do you go find more of them?
Welcome back to Amplify AI Partners. I'm your host, Hamza Malik, and today we're diving into something that's absolutely critical, I think, for the future of financial services, which is how process engineering is kind of becoming a little bit of a secret weapon for growth, particularly within FinTech for today. I'm excited for today's guest. He brings a unique perspective to the conversation. Jason Whitlock has walked in the shoes of the people he now helps. He's been a practicing financial advisor who understands the daily grind, the client pressures, the the operational challenges firsthand. What makes him fascinating, I think, is that he didn't just stay in that world. He transformed himself, and I'll give him a chance to speak on that. Jason, thank you for being on the show. I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself in your own words and also Full Scale Advisors.
Hamza, thanks for having me. I started my career pre-2008 in finance as an analyst, moved over client-facing, started my own practice in wealth management, working with clients. At my peak, I managed just over 550 million in assets. Really enjoyed doing that for people in operating within the wealth management space. I got a little bored with it. I've always been tech forward and wanting to do something in the world of tech. And so I think 5-6 years ago, I pivoted away from my wealth management practice, then got into FinTech and SaaS go to market. It's been an interesting journey having the knowledge that I have on that side and then bringing it to, these tech companies and these FinTech providers, helping them understand, really the mindset of their target prospect. How do they look at the world? How do they look at their tech stack? What appeals to them? And I've really been able to find my stride in that space because I can speak the language of tech and of the financial professionals that we help. I started Full Scale Advisors, ideally as a practice management consulting firm, and then realized pretty quickly that there's a lot of practice management out there. What they really needed was someone to come in and say, okay, cool. Like let's look at your processes. Let's look at your tech stack. Let's find the alignment so that we can reduce friction in your workflows, which are ultimately going to lead to you being more productive. And then, start trying to adopt the methodology that works for these larger tech firms within your own practice to generate leads instead of going out and purchasing them. Basically teach you how to fish as opposed to just providing you with the fish.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of my questions here is that, what was the pivotal moment that made you realize, you want to be on the building side of technology rather than just the using side?
I have ADHD. A lot of my content is kind of focused around that. And I realized that I leaned on tech constantly to ensure that I was staying productive and that I was, staying competitive in my field, in my space. I hate redundancy. I hate busy work. And so I would go out and I would identify these solutions through technology that would allow me to really focus and hone in on the aspects of that business that I enjoyed the most. Because if, the days where I was stuck doing a lot of servicing that didn't really fill my cup or, excite me, I noticed I would just get incredibly worn down. But when I found ways to automate it and really opened up my schedule to do more things that I loved, I was able to serve my clients in a much broader and deeper sense than my peers, because I decided to lean into tech as opposed to, just go with what everybody else is using.
I think that's a poignant, I hope that's the right word, point. Because as somebody who's coming from, corporate management consulting to just getting into the entrepreneurial world myself, I find it really, it is stressful, but it's kind of liberating to kind of walk your own path. One issue I was feeling the same way. There were certain parts about consulting in general that I really enjoyed. Delivering presentations and relationship building was certainly one of them. Formatting decks at 11 p.m. and having to ask permission for every little thing was maybe not so fun, right? So, Jason, really quick, before we get into kind of what you're seeing in the marketplace, for full-scale advisors, just for our audience, you talked about, reducing friction within workflows. So who are the types of people that you generally work with, and what is your offer?
I work with a lot of early stage founders, SaaS companies. I've ran the range from 5 million in revenue all the way up to 500 million in revenue, operating different parts of the processes. I enjoy that space. One of the areas that we're really trying to capture now is working with those advisory practices, the RIAs in the wealth management space that aren't necessarily tech companies, but they serve clients in a way that we're familiar with, and we have RevOps strategies that we've put in place for them that will allow them to generate a lot of organic growth, and then also make the most of their time with clients. They can spend more time doing the things that are going to just deepen those relationships and make them stickier. We're taking a tech GTM approach to the wealth management world.
Awesome. I like that. So, like, one kind of general question is, especially with this space of wealth management, how do you go about bridging the gap between, hey, this is the way we've always done it, versus, okay, here's how the technology can help, amplify what you're already great at? How do you kind of bridge that?
Speaking the language comes in handy, understanding the mindset. Wealth management has a notorious reputation for being very slow to adopt new technology. And then, conversely, you've got new tools that'll hit the market. Some advisors have what I call shiny thing syndrome. Well, they'll go pick up all of these different tech tools, and then it just sits in an overly bloated tech stack that they're paying, monthly seat license for. They're not really using it effectively. There's a lot of overlap between what, some of their tools do. And so basically they really only use about 5 to 10% of the actual capabilities of any one tool that they have. Coming in and highlighting some of those inefficiencies, it saves them money right off the bat when you can point out, hey, like this tool does 7 things that this other tool, only does 3 of. Let's just get rid of it. And, really trying to slim that down, lean, it's resource management, lean the tech stack out, because the simpler your setup is, the less complicated your setup is, the easier it is to find a process and eliminate friction. And so that's kind of how I lead that approach. Plus, it's easier to diagnose friction. If you have 15 moving parts, it's going to be a little bit harder than if you have, say 5 or 7.
I know that very well. And not even from a consulting perspective. A few years ago, my brother and I bought my mom a Volkswagen Atlas, right? We liked Volkswagen. I had a Jetta. It was my first car. But the Atlas at that time, new model, right? Well, because it was a new model and a German car, I could really only bring it to the dealership to get it fixed. One of the parts was on back order. It was like an internal combustion shaft rod or something. And it was on back order in Germany. And the dealership just seized the car. They're like, we can't give this back to you. It's too, we don't want to have you have any issues on the road. So for 2 months, 2.5 months, just didn't have my car, right? And then when it was time, like I moved out of New York City to the suburbs in Connecticut. I said, okay, I'm not taking the subway anymore. I need my own car. And it's not for my mom, it's for me. So I got a Cadillac, a CT5, right? I love the thing. And the only time, and it hasn't had an issue yet, but it's the difference between, the German engineering, sure, everybody knows it. A lot of moving parts. The American-made machine is a lot simpler, and people have told me that. Certainly, there's not going to be any parts on back order, I hope, internationally. So, just an analogy there. So, okay, so Jason, you mentioned shiny object syndrome, right? Obviously, AI integration is a hot topic. And I imagine there's quite a big difference between AI that's flashy versus the tools that actually streamline operations. So, can you walk us through maybe an example of how you've helped a practice implement AI in a way that directly impacted their, ability to, either serve their clients or close their business, anything like that?
The easiest way to implement AI within the practice is identifying the thing that is the most tedious. And I think there's a lot of advisors out there that would probably agree taking notes and then memorializing those notes within their CRM for each client. It takes up a fair amount of time. Most of those notes will get added way after the client interaction, which the most you're not getting 100% capture of what that meeting was really like, because there's going to be integrity issues in your memory to recall some of those things. Coming in with AI note takers that implement within their systems is that's number one. I mean, that's the easiest thing. Outside of that, there's quite a bit of consternation within the wealth management community for how AI can be implemented within their practices. So, of course, there's workflow management, there's AI agents that they can incorporate. The biggest issue is the data, the regulatory environment that they sit in. Like advisors rely on their compliance teams to kind of give them direction as to how they should go and what tools they should use. And AI right now is just novel and common as it is these days. It's still something that advisors and firms are a little scared of to adopt it a little more broadly. There's plenty of opportunities to use it. It's just there's not a lot of compliance or regulation around it, clarity, if you will, for them to really utilize it as effectively as they could. So, having to speak that regulatory and compliance language that they understand and then look for ways to say, hey, like we can still use AI without putting your data at risk, without putting your client's information at risk, and without putting your firm or practice at risk of regulatory issues by using it. This is just how we have to go about doing it.
So does that feel like an evangelical sale at times? What I mean is like, you got to kind of introduce them to this whole concept almost from scratch. I'm sure they might have heard of AI with all the media buzz, but do they really understand, how they work and what it really is, for their use cases?
AI has been around long enough now, and it's gained enough traction that most people are going to be aware of what AI is. Being innovative and adopting that tech as an individual RIA or like a small to mid-sized practice, you don't want to be the first one to do that because you run the risk of getting sideways with the regulatory bodies or, falling into some compliance issues that you didn't see coming as a result of using it. You would much rather see other people do it first to make sure that the waters are safe to swim in. There is an education perspective that comes with it, explaining the difference between, neural networks and language learning models. Most of them don't realize that ChatGPT can't really do math that well. So, like, why would we use it to run statistical analysis of market trends? It's not good at that yet. So understanding the limitations and the use cases for them. And again, it's identifying opportunities, doing it a little bit at a time, not going to come in and try to convince them to just automate everything right off the bat, because historically that's never worked well for those firms and they just won't move that way.
One interesting thing that I've been keeping up with is, the big tech companies who are, both creating these tools and obviously are the first users. I don't know if you've heard about what Meta's doing, which is that they're basically throwing like insane amount of money and poaching AI engineers from OpenAI. We're talking like professional athlete level these engineers are being traded around like baseball players or something. Like so and so got traded from OpenAI to Meta for 30 million, $50 million. What's interesting is I don't think Meta has put out anything yet that's kind of, catching any kind of buzz.
It's interesting you bring it up because Meta is a little behind the curve, but I mean, OpenAI they're an AI company. They came to the table really first. I mean, they may not have been the first, but they were the first, they were the first to get any kind of eyes on them. And Meta's trying to catch up. I mean, their models don't necessarily compete well with many of the others. And I mean, it's a good strategy to employ. Go get the brain trust that your competitors are using if you want to jump into that space and create it. But I think for Meta, it's how can we create an AI for our existing base and attract new users to our base. And I'm curious to see how that works out for them.
I did see a headline, and I think it was Sam Altman, and he said, "Look, I don't know how that's gonna go, but he's like, I'm pretty sure, my people are missionaries. We do this because we want to, and we want to see the change in the world, et cetera, et cetera." And he said the missionaries are probably going to outcompete the mercenaries who are hired guns. He said there might be some cultural issues going on over there. I guess time will tell. I've seen that, your approach is it's not solely focused on the technology side, right? You also focus on sales consulting, obviously, and marketing, taking that, tech go-to-market approach to these kind of different type of markets. So how do those elements, for you work together in terms of the whole client journey instead of purely, back office type efficiencies in terms of like merging the go-to-market with the tech adoption?
The first thing that you have to do is to start at the very, very top and start to work your way down. I like to use an analogy where it may take you a minute to find the thread, but once you find the thread, that's the one that you can pull to get to the root of the issue. Looking at it as a whole before you kind of explode it to look at the inside is key. So throughout my process, when I talk to founders, when I talk to the CEOs, I want to identify from them, where do you see the friction? What are the biggest headaches facing you, and why do you think that is, and get their hypothesis from them. It's kind of like you're at a shop trying to explain to the mechanic what's going on with your car. They don't necessarily know, where the issue is coming from, but they know the sound it's making. They know how it's making them feel. And so it's my job as the mechanic to say, okay, like, it sounds like we're leaning towards it being maybe a marketing problem. Let's go in and let's start there. And what I found is a lot of issues come from marketing and sales sitting in their own silos. Realistically, I mean, I solve so many problems by saying, look, marketing and sales needs to be under the same umbrella. They need to work together. Marketing needs to ensure that they're bringing in the right prospects so that your sales team can then deliver on it. Because I've seen really good sales teams fail miserably because not because they weren't good at what they were doing, but because they weren't getting in front of the right people. And I also think it's critical to teach leadership, to help leadership understand that not everybody is a fit, and that's okay. Trying to fit everybody or trying to feel like you can close everybody, that doesn't work. You have high churn rates. It ends up costing you so much more in the long run when you try to make everybody fit. And so start by defining what does your ideal prospect look like? What's your ideal avatar? And that's going to shape everything else beneath it. Like, because now that's who we're trying to target.
Get those ICPs down tight. Make sure there's proper rules of engagement between marketing and sales. Ideally, and I know this is more of a SaaS thing, so I'd be interested to hear how this plays out in some of those advisory verticals, but RevOps as kind of that unifying glue between those two silos is really going to help those data flows. Yeah, no, I totally get it.
You made a comment. You're interested to see how it works in the advisory models. This is how it's traditionally been done for them. A lot of advisory firms, one of the first things they do is they create their website. The thing is, they're nothing special. Nothing stands out about them. You can hire a company that will build you a website, and their selling point is that it's compliant content. You go to their sites and it's just like you see one site, you've seen them all. The only thing different is going to be the logo, the about us, and maybe the color scheme. They utilize, best practices, and the SEO on it is very bland. It's a boilerplate, but it's something that they don't really have to think about. They're like, okay, cool, I've got a website. I'm legitimate now. But it's so much more than that. The way that it's always been done for them is to just stake their claim to their little corner of the internet and hope that people come across them. And then they never really put any effort into the website. They've got it. It's, if someone wants to go online and search them, then they can find them. And that's where it stops.
Right.
And so what I like to do is go in and say, okay, hey, look, like, first off, you need to niche down. You need to determine, of the clients you serve, which ones are your favorite? Why are they your favorite? How do you go find more of them? Like, and they're afraid to niche down. They feel like if they start to get granular with their ICP, then they're going to miss opportunity. And so I constantly say all the time, just because you're choosing to serve this specific niche doesn't mean you can't help anybody else. This is just saying this is who you want to serve. You'll still get clients. I was an advisor. I niched down. I had clients all over the place. But my choice to find a niche and stick to it is ultimately, I mean, if people are looking for someone that specializes in that, they're coming to me. They're not going anywhere else.
Right.
So now I had a dedicated flow, and I think it's taking all of the things that they're already doing as a check the box and being more intentional with it, putting more thought and intention into how it's being implemented, which is ultimately what's going to lead to success for them.
Yeah, I think that's a very salient point. Certainly, I've seen countless websites, honestly, most of them are like brochures. You're right. Once you've seen one, you've seen them all. I've done a lot of work with, I think PE companies might be slightly different, but it's kind of the same thing in doing like these value creation, go-to-market projects with them, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the color scheme might be different, but yeah, and like we had our, ICP nailed down in terms of the PE, type of companies we wanted to work with. So you're right on the money there, boilerplate. Okay, Jason. So looking ahead, right? What do you see as kind of the next big wave for these kind of advisory practices in terms of their go-to-market, in terms of their process engineering? What do you think some of those advisors should be preparing or thinking about that might not be on their radar just yet?
I think AI adoption is at the very top of that list. It's determining what elements of their process can be automated and what elements of their process should be automated, because not everything should be automated. So AI integration is going to be a big one. You're starting to see a lot of bigger players in the SaaS space that are really starting to put all of these tools and features and everything. They're starting to put so many different parts within their software to be able to say that we're a one and done type solution. And be careful with some of that stuff, because a lot of those tools, while it's nice to have it all lumped into one, depending on what your process looks like and how those things are implemented, look for something that is going to be better suited for you. On the horizon, you're going to get a lot of reg tech that's coming down the pike that's going to help them stay more compliant. That'll help them implement changes a lot quicker, get questions answered. Finance is all about convenience. People want convenience. They want easy access. They want to be able to communicate and get responses in a timely fashion. And technology is going to be the best way for these wealth management practices to lean into tech and use tech so that they protect their human capital and spend more time doing the things that are going to make them wealthier, make them more money, more successful, and let tech hammer out the rest.
Awesome. Well, Jason, I genuinely think this has been really insightful. I love what you're doing, taking your different experiences and applying, tech go-to-market strategy to, finance and wealth management. And, I think what really comes through is that, yeah, this type of process engineering or even consultative sales is what we used to call it. It's not, replacing the human element. It's really about amplifying it. And, I think you are helping those advisors, to be more of who they already are, in most cases, probably, just, maybe a little bit more efficiently or at greater scale. For our listeners, who want to learn more about you or, connect with you or full scale advisors, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, so you can, I'm always open to connecting with people on LinkedIn, have people reach out to me there, or they can email me. It's really simple. It's jason@fullscaleadvisors.com. We're open to all different kinds of opportunities. We like to help, and we have a pretty vast skill set. But I would tell anybody, like, at the very least, starts with a conversation. If you feel like there's friction in your process, reach out. Let's chat about it. Let's identify if it's something that, you can fix real quick, or if it's something that requires us to dive into it. We don't like to gatekeep information. If it's a quick fix, we'll help you make it. We're not trying to charge people for easy things. So,
All right. Well, again, thank you, Jason, for joining us, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Amplify AI.